To give me the opportunity to give a second presentation after the one of yesterday. So my talk will be about green extraction techniques for phytochemicals from food processing byproducts. And with extraction, I don't mean extraction for analytics, so it's not an analytical extraction, but we try to focus on industrial extraction. This talk is part of the RESCUE project, so this is a European FP7 project, and it stands for Resource Efficient and Safe Food Production and Processing. Of course, we have some co-authors, also people from the University of Leuven in Belgium. So, a short overview of the presentation. So, I will give a rather long introduction about conventional and green extraction techniques. Then I will show some data on extraction of carotenoids from carrots, where we did some enzyme pretreatment. I will also give some data on extraction of polyphenols from apple plants, and then finally to some conclusions. So this slide I also showed yesterday. So if we are thinking about valorization of food byproducts towards high-end value components, so as you know, and also like I told you yesterday, our food industry, they create a lot of byproducts, not called waste. Nowadays it's used to provide energy or feed, maybe landfilling, but these byproducts still contain a lot of useful components like carbohydrates, proteins, fats, phytochemicals like carotenoids, polyphenols, also alkaloids. And the idea is first to valorize these byproducts towards one or more of these products before we can still go to energy or feed. So, as an introduction, phytochemicals in plants. So, you have here a picture of tomato, starting from green tomato, orange and red tomato. So the green color is due to the chlorophylls, especially they are localized in the chloroplast. And the red color is due to the lycopene, which is a carotenoid, and you can find it in the chloroplast. So phytochemicals, where are they in the plant? So that's important for extraction. They are in insoluble cell structures, like vacuoles or lipoprotein bilayers, for example, carotenoids. You have other phytochemicals like polyphenols. They are especially attached to the cell wall, to the fiber product of the cells, due to hydrogen bonding between the hydroxyl groups of the phenols and the oxygen of the sugars. But in general, so we are talking about phytochemicals, about secondary plant metabolites. In general, they are in the cell at very low concentrations, and therefore it's actually very difficult to have a good extraction yield. We will extract only a small amount. And then the question always comes, how about the economic feasibility of these extraction techniques? So, as an introduction, some conventional extraction of phytochemicals. So, I took this from the handbook of plant food phytochemicals. Well, people are usually using dried plant material to avoid degradation, oxidation. But also, like I said yesterday, drying biomass is really a costly procedure, so it will cost you a lot of money. Extraction of phytochemicals from biomass. So these are solid liquid extraction techniques. They are based on the fusion of the solvents and also solubilization of the phytochemical into the solvent. And then some conventional methods. Well, the first one is maceration, where you soak plants in organic solvent at room temperature. But this is time consuming and solvent consuming. Another technique, another method is infusion, where you don't use organic solvent, but only water at the temperature of 100 degrees, but it also takes some time. Of course, everybody knows the substrate extraction, you see here a picture. This is actually the reference method, where you use solvent, organic solvent heat. Another conventional technique is steam, hydrodistillation. This has been used in the industry for the extraction of water in soluble volatiles, like for example the extraction of essential oils in the perfume industry. Some factors affecting extraction, well, you probably know this, but just go through it. The salt is important, so nowadays hexane is used to extract apolar components, methanol or polyphenols, for example. But organic solvents in general, they are toxic. for human health, also toxic for the environment. So that's why it's always a good idea to use food-grade solvents, like water, ethanol, or you can also evaporator solvents. And that's why we are focusing on green extraction methods. The second parameter is the temperature. So when general temperature increases, you have better extraction. But you have to be careful with heat label components that they don't degrade. Time is an important parameter. In general, time increases, you will have better extraction. But the time will increase, so also your cost will increase. So you always have to look for a balance between cost and time or at the extraction rate. And also particle size, so when it decreases, you also have better extraction. But also in general, when you have smaller particles, it becomes more difficult to separate particles from solids. So there also we have to look for a balance between extraction yield and downstream processing. So therefore, we look to green extraction techniques. Also took this from the same handbook. Well, in general, phytochemicals, they have a rather good solubility in organic solids compared to the solubility of some phytochemicals in water and CO2, so it's not that easy. So it's actually better to use organic solvent, but we don't want that. So here you see an overview. So you can use supercritical CO2 extraction, pressurized liquid extraction, enzyme system extraction, and non-thermal retreatment. So you can use, for example, ultrasounds or pulse track fields. So something about supercritical CO2. So this is here the picture. So it's the temperature on the horizontal axis and the pressure on the vertical one. So CO2 can be a liquid, can be a gas, but from a certain point, this is called critical point. And for CO2, it's at a temperature of 31 degrees Celsius and at a pressure of 74 bar. You've gone in the supercritical region. So actually, this means that CO2 is not a gas anymore, CO2 is not a liquid anymore. It's something in between, and it has some advantages of both. So in general, supercritical CO2 extraction is very apolar. So it's often been used in literature to extract carotenoids, for example, from carrot, also from other vegetables. So it's very apolar. You can make it more polar or less apolar when you use co-solvents, like ethanol. And in industry, there is one good example that is known, showing that it can be possible at an industrial scale, and this is the industrial decaffeination from coffee. The advantage of this technology is that it can work at a low temperature, 30 degrees, a little bit more. It's environmentally safe, as if you use CO2. It's food grade, and it can also give you selective extractions. But the disadvantage is that when you use high pressure, this is really costly since there are a lot of safety issues and also on your investment costs, for example, for extraction facilities. Second method is a pressurized liquid extraction. This has also been called an accelerated solvent extraction. A lot of people know this technology. It's often used at lab scale. Another name is supercritical solvent extraction. When you only use water, you call it supercritical or superheat water extraction. It's a pressurized technology, so you use pressure, so you can use temperature above the boiling point of your solvent, and you can keep the solvent in liquid form, so you don't use steam. The advantage is that you use less solvent, short extraction times. But the disadvantage is again, like supercritical CO2, you are working at high pressure, so the cost of your extraction facility will increase. And most applications are actually analytical extraction in the lab. Third technology is enzyme system extraction. So what you do actually, basically, is that you degrade cell wall. Cell wall contains cellulose pectins. So best enzymes you can use are cellulases, so which degrade cellulose, and the pectinases who degrade pectins. When you're using enzymes in a process, there are some parameters you have to take care of for an optimal enzyme efficiency. So enzymes work optimal at a certain pH and a certain temperature. So the advantage of this technology is that when you use enzymes, well, it's per definition a green technology, but the disadvantage is that enzymes cost a lot of money, first, and also the extraction can be slower, so enzymes take some time to do their stuff. And then finally, you have non-thermal pretreatment. So the first example is ultrasounds, where you use sound waves with a high frequency, at least 20 kilohertz. So these ultrasound waves, they create bubbles, and when they collapse, they increase the cell porosity, and this makes it much easier for solvents to have better extraction. Second technique is pulsed field, PET. So you create strong electric field between two electrodes. You also disrupt your cell membrane, you have increase of cell porosity, and then also solvents can extract better the chemicals, the phytochemicals that you are looking for. And this is also been used extensively in literature, in research, to enhance extraction of polyphenols, anthocyanins, aromatics, polysaccharides, polyols. So some challenges of these green techniques. Well, first, the ability, or you have to take care, you have to look for scaling up issues at industrial level. So this means that you have some capital investment, also some production costs, of course. About ultrasound as an industrial technique, well, people say it has a large potential. Since the energy input and the energy density, they do not depend on size of scale, which is important. You can have, or you will have high investment costs for the pressurized extraction, like I said, also for the supercritical CO2 extraction, is actually also a type of pressurized extraction. There are also challenges if you want to use continuous extraction versus batch extraction. And maybe in the future, people might use ionic liquids, food grade. Nowadays, you have some examples there. They are based on amino acids and then ester salts. This is something probably for the future. There is some research going on about this also. Okay, so that was my rather large introduction. Something about keratinoids. So Dr. Radash will talk more within a few minutes, but I will be very short. So keratinoids, they are natural pigments. They are localized in chromoblasts, like example, beta-carotene. So it gives an orange color. So you see in the picture these yellow, orange, red colors of carrots. They are due to these carotenoids. There are two groups. You have keratins. They contain only carbon and hydrogen, like beta-carotene. So this is here the chemical structure. And it makes them very hydrophobic. So there's no oxygen. Compared to the example fields, they contain also oxygen. Examples, for example, lupine. The oxygen makes them less hydrophobic, but they are still rather hydrophobic. And this is the chemical structure, so here we have the hydroxyl groups. They have provitamin A activity. They can be used as antioxidants, like we also heard several times. They are used nowadays as natural colorants. People want to use more and more natural color in food as a food ingredient. And they are also used as antioxidant in fruit, meat, and nutraceuticals. We look to some green extraction techniques for carotenoids. We focus here on two food processing byproducts: carotol, this is the picture, and also endive. So it looks like this, right to the left. So endive is a green vegetable, very well known in Europe. We pre-treated this products with enzymes, and we selected some based on literature. So we used viscozyme, which is a cell-degrading enzyme complex from an Aspergillus species, and it has endo-beta-glucanase activity. So it's not one enzyme, it's a main section. Second one was cellulose, so it's a cellulase from a Trichoderma species, and we also use a cellulase also from an Aspergillus. So these are some extraction results for keratin from carrot. So here on the left side of the table, we use this solvent mix, hexane ethanol acetone, so hexane, not fully grade of course, but we use this as a kind of reference method. We have some data for keratin from carrots, expressed as micrograms per gram of dry matter. As treatment, we actually saw that without using enzymes, we got the highest extraction yield. And in the beginning we were puzzled, compared to where we used buffers with the viscozyme, for example. So the extraction yield decreased from 1300 to 800. And with only buffer, we got even a lower extraction yield. So actually the enzyme is at least doing some, but it's not as good as without using enzymes. And we did some experiments, but actually the explanation was very easy. So we were working with wet biomass, not the dry biomass. So it's also this ethanol acetone, you can also work on wet stuff. And since we use these enzymes with citrate buffer, we saw that carotenoids are very apolar, and actually your expression efficiency of apolar components, it decreases when you start from wet biomass. This is actually very basic chemistry, but we were about supercritical CO2, we also use that. Here you see that with the enzymes, for example, viscozyme and cellulose, the extraction efficiency is better compared to the pre-treatment. The reason or the difference between the table on the right and the table on the left is that for supercritical CO2 we dry the biomass. Otherwise supercritical CO2 will not pass through your wet biomass. You cannot do that. So as conclusion, viscozyme is the best enzyme to pre-treat the carrot for supercritical fluid extraction, so with CO2. We had also the same data with ethyl acetate as extraction solvent, also, but on dry materials, not on the wet material. We also used some other pre-treatment technologies like steam explosion, acid pre-treatment, but the conclusion there was that we did not have a positive effect on the keratin extraction. Okay, so that was some things about enzyme pretreatment and carotenoids. Now some things about polyphenols. So a lot of talks are going about polyphenols, so I will be very short. They are secondary plant metabolites. They are water soluble. They have antioxidant properties, so they have positive effect on human health. And this is here an example of chlorogenic acids. This is actually also a very interesting result, I think. We pressed apple in the absence of oxygen, so anaerobic. And the cultivar of apple we use is called, it's a very common cultivar in Europe. So we pressed the apple, and the juice contained 75% of the recovery, the pomace about 20%, and we lost about 5% in the press. Now, when we looked to the polyphenol concentration, so we analyzed all the polyphenols that are present in juice and pomace, and in general, the conclusion is that we found about 66%, 2/3 of the polyphenols were recovered in the juice, and about 1/3 we could recover in the pomace. Now, we did this anaerobically. So, for example, if you look at the data of this CA stands for chlorogenic acid. So, after an anaerobic pressing, we could recover 12 milligrams of chlorogenic acid per 100 grams of fresh apple. So everything is calculated back to 100 grams of this fresh apple. If we do this aerobically, if you just do it like you normal would do it, so just in the air, open air, we lose about 38% of the polyphenols because they are oxidized. Also for the pomace, we had similar results. So anaerobically, we could recover about 4 milligrams per 100 grams. Aerobically, only 0.6, so we lose about 80%. But the conclusion here is that when you extract fruits, like apple, in an oxygen-free environment, you recover more polyphenols in the juice and in the pomace, meaning actually that your juice and your pomace have a higher value. And that's always interesting. They are worth more money. You can, for example, when you can sell juice with more polyphenols, you can ask a little bit more money for that. Also for the pomace, when you want to recover polyphenols from apple pomace. Then we did some experiments about an apple pomace biorefinery, and there we looked to a double valorization of apple pomace towards a major compound, Pectin, and towards a minor compound, polyphenols. This is here the schematic structure of Pectin. These experiments were done by the partner in the project, so it's also a research institute in our localized in the Netherlands. They use sodium hydroxide to extract pectins from apple palms, and they were focusing on this rhamnoglycanol 1 domain. So actually, pectin contains 4 domains here: rhamnoglycanol 1 and 2, xyloglycanol and homoglycanol. So actually, when you extract pectins from citrus, people, or companies like Cargill, they are actually focusing on this domain, the homoglycanol part. What is well known about this domain is that it contains a lot of the yellow building block, and this yellow one is calodronic acid. So when you extract citrus, when you extract pectin from citrus, you have pectin with a lot of calodronic acids. And actually, when you extract pectin from fruits, for example, it can only be called pectin when it contains at least 65% of homoglycanol. But we focus on other domains, and we focus here on this domain with some sugars attached to it, and this domain is called a hairy pectin. So, and you have the backbone with some sugar hairs on it. So I will not go into detail into these results, but they use sodium hydroxide. And we were thinking, well, what should we do first? Do we have to first extract polyphenols followed by sodium extraction, sodium hydroxide extraction, or the other way around? So here we see some data on for apple palms, where we use ethanol as an extraction solvent. So here on the vertical axis, you have the total polyphenol concentration. When we say we have no pre-treatment or no treatment, it means that we immediately then have done an ethanol extraction of apple palms. After what treatment we did an ethanol extraction of this apple palms after we treated the palms with water at 60 degrees in 24 hours. And we use these conditions because the pectins were also extracted with sodium hydroxide at 60 degrees and 24 hours. And the conclusion here is that when you look to these data, the sodium hydroxide treatment, we could only find small amount of polyphenols in the palms. We could find some polyphenols in the supernatants, but we actually lose this part. When we don't do it pre-treatment, or don't do it sodium hydroxide treatment, we could recover about 3,200 micrograms of total polyphenols per gram of dry matter. When we use water as a comparison, polyphenols, they were recovered from apple palms, but we actually found a lot of polyphenols in the supernatants. So this means that actually water is good extraction. You can use organic solvents, so it's actually a nice example of green extraction. So the conclusion was that if you want to do a cascade approach of apple palms, if you want to do a double valorization of the same byproduct, you have hydrolysis of polyphenols by sodium hydroxide. So for apple palms, you first have to extract polyphenols followed by sodium hydroxide extraction of pectins. You cannot do it the other way around, otherwise your polyphenols will be degraded. Then we took some methods from literature from Hildebrand, where they looked at extraction of polyphenols from apple palms. They used as food grade solvents or environmental nice solvents, ethanol 56%, 8 degrees in 31 minutes, and they optimized this. Also they used acetone 65%, 25 degrees and 60 minutes. And then we also used water without these organic solvents at the same conditions. And the results were for the dried apple palms, but actually the acetone showed the best recovery, and then followed by ethanol and water. So acetone was a better extraction solvent compared to ethanol, and we also saw that hot water was actually comparable to ethanol. This was for the dried palms. We also repeated this experiment where we used fresh palms. Remember, if you don't have to dry your product, it will be much more convenient, will put your costs down. And here you see actually that water extraction, only water, 8 degrees, and also ethanol, they are more or less comparable extraction solvents. So it means that you can have a nice green extraction with only water or polyphenols from apple. Now, what we're also doing is we would like to concentrate these polyphenols in the extraction solvent. And therefore, we use membrane technology. We screened 4 nanofiltration membranes, so they are polymeric membranes, to concentrate polyphenols in our extraction zones, so water, ethanol, and acetone. We selected the best membrane for ethanol, acetone, and water, and here you see a picture how it looks like in the lab. So it's a very small membrane filtration unit. We only use it for screening tests. So you see the scale, so this is a, let's say, 50 ml ethanol. So that's the scale. These are the results for the ethanol extract, so the extracts with ethanol from our apple plants. So the different colors, so the red one is membrane A at the pressure of 20 bar. The blue one is membrane A at 30 bar. And then we have 3 commercial membranes, this on 5, NX, and NF90. We call it membrane A. We are working on some IP about this, so for the moment we cannot tell much about the names. The conclusion here from these data. So what we want is we want a high rejection of about 100%. It means that your polyphenols will not pass the membrane. So we have a nice rejection. You can concentrate actually your polyphenols in your ethanol. Ethanol is here 56% of ethanol. And for most polyphenols, the rejections were up to 100%. So these were good results. The green membrane, the data 5 showed some lower results compared to the others. So this was the worst membrane. What we also saw is that for smaller polyphenols, we got the rejections were not that nice. Also, these polyphenols were present in the apple plants at more or less lower concentrations. Here, the polyphenols are also ordered from the low to the high molecular weight, and we see that the rejections increase when the molecular weight is also increasing. Here with astragalines, for example, well, it's not working very well for astragalines. We don't know yet why, actually, the reason why is it. We also, in our screening test, we measured the permeate flux, because that's also important. What we saw is that for this NF90 membrane, we got a flux of 23 liters per square meter per hour. And based on the flux, and based on the previous data with the rejection, we selected this NF90 membrane for the ethanol extracts. So the highest flux is also a very good rejection. We did the same for the acetone extracts. So also, so we did some extraction of the acetone 65% from our apple bananas. I will not go into detail on the results. We used other membranes. The only one, so membrane A is the same membrane A as with ethanol, but we also use other ones like this membrane, this nanopro membrane. So these are also commercial membranes. The reason why we use other membranes is also another solvent compared to ethanol. So we have to use other membranes, otherwise the membranes will dissolve. The conclusion here is that for most polyphenols, the rejections were up to 100%, so that's okay, and that the rejections also increased when the molecular weight increased, like with the ethanol extract. So at the lower molecular weights, the rejections were not up. Also here the flux, so membrane A showed me the best membrane with a flux of about 20 liters per square meter per hour. So for acetone, we would select this membrane A at 30 bar. Since it showed high flux, it's also a very good rejection. Then we are still working on the next steps. So we also perform these tests with only water. We will then go to membrane tests at lab scale on a 5-degree scale, where we will use the selected membrane for ethanol and water. So we will not go further with acetone, since it's actually not really a food-grade solvent. And then finally, we will also perform these experiments on a semi-industrial scale. So we will perform a membrane test at the pilot scale with 400 liters to determine the realistic parameters like flux, fouling at the pilot scale or the semi-industrial scale. And therefore, we will use the food pilot at Ilvo in Ghent, in Belgium. So this pilot is actually nice, since with this equipment we can extract apples also anaerobically. So you see, well, it's not very clear, but you see here this glass reactor, and there the apples are pressed and they are in an anaerobic environment, so under vacuum. Then we will also use the solvent pilot we have at our institute, at FITO. So here we can use organic solvents for membranes. So we have a lot of experience with water and membranes, but we developed this pilot system to also work with organic solvents. But you know, you have to be very careful. Everything has to be ATEX, so explosion-free, since when you use organic solvents at high pressure, high temperature, you can have explosion. So please be careful with that. So, some conclusions. The enzyme pretreatment for the extraction of the carotenoids from wet biomass, this can be counterproductive. So, like I explained, carotenoids are apolar and extracted from wet biomass is different. Anaerobic pressing of apple to prevent oxidation of polyphenols in juice and pomace is really good idea because you increase the value of your juice and of your pomace. Then, from the point of view of a food waste biorefinery, this is actually the refinery of a food byproduct into a combination of a major compound, like protein or a fat or a sugar, and a minor compound, like carotenoid or polyphenol or terpenes or alkaloids, whatever. But the combination of both will make the process, in most cases, economically feasible. And I showed some examples of the apple pomace biorefinery where we were looking at the combination of the extraction of pectins as a major compound, it's sugar actually, and the polyphenols. Then you can use only water to extract polyphenols, and it's actually a nice example of green solvent, so we don't use organic solvents. And then finally, we are now looking to membrane technology to concentrate the polyphenols in our solvents. So you don't have to evaporate your solvents. Some acknowledgements for this project, so we are working together with TNO, the Netherlands, CNDA in Spain, so these are two research institutes, and also companies, Provalor from the Netherlands, ISU from Turkey, and BTNF from Israel. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention.